starts in your cells. And what does that actually mean? Because I think most people, they look in the mirror and they're like, "Oh, I'm getting old," or you feel the creaks in the joints or the low energy. So help everyone explain why those are symptoms and not actually the cause of aging.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here today. So you're absolutely right. We start to first notice aging on not always necessarily on the outside, but in our wrinkles and our creaky joints, but it typically happens decades and decades before that inside of our cells. And I hope we've done a good job communicating this to you all that aging begins in our cells. When our cells start to age, that's when we start to age. So naturally, we want to slow cellular aging in order to help keep us young for longer. Now, scientists have identified really the two major reasons that our cells age. The first one is damage. And I know we've talked about this before. This is that trillions and trillions of attacks on our cells every single second that's causing them to age. Those attacks cause damage to our DNA, they cause damage to our mitochondria, they cause these proteins to accumulate. And then, like I said, as that damage accumulates, your cells start to age and then you start to age. Now, there's this new concept that is new to you all now that we haven't introduced you to previously, the other side of this story, which is the depletion. This is the other thing that is really causing our cells to age as we get older. So, what do our cells need to repair that damage from those trillions and trillions of attacks that are happening every second? They need energy. So, where energy is made is inside of our mitochondria. And our mitochondria, they need NAD in order to help make that energy again, so our cells can use it to repair damage. But as we get older, what happens is our mitochondria, they're not as efficient. NAD levels start to decline. So now our cells are really, they're facing two battles. They have all of these attacks, right? So trillions and trillions of attacks coming in every second, damaging our cells, and then energy is declining. So that means our cells are having a harder time repairing that damage, right? So that's when that damage starts to accumulate, our cells start to age, and we start to age as well.
Awesome. So you talked about NAD, and I
Yep.
know, at least for me, I see NAD products everywhere. So can you tell us about what those products are doing and what, more importantly, what makes Vivix Plus different?
Yeah, this is a great question. And like I just mentioned, NAD levels are declining as we're getting older, right? So it makes sense to replace them. So we have products on the market that replace that NAD. That NAD, as I mentioned, is going to help increase energy. That energy is going to be used to help repair damage. Great. But what did we just talk about were the two things that cause our cells to age? Depletion and damage. So the NAD products are only addressing one half of the story. So this really became the idea behind our Vivix Plus product is what if we could address both sides of this equation? What if we could target the two things that are causing our cells to age? Because if you think about it, I love this analogy, and I know Dr. Mache did a beautiful experiment at conference that really helped to articulate this. It's NAD products are kind of like adding water to a leaky bucket. Okay, so you add the water, that's like adding NAD to our cells. But all of that water, if there's holes in the bucket, are being used to repair damage. So you're never getting ahead. We also need energy for our cells to do everything that they do to help us function optimally. And if all of that energy is being used to repair damage that's leaking out of the bucket, we can't use any more energy just to help our cells function optimally. So that's what we did with Vivix Plus. We wanted to, yes, provide that NAD to give our cells that substrate to generate energy, but also help protect against all that damage so that NAD and that energy doesn't have to be exclusively used to repair damage, but also be used to help our cells function at their very best.
So I'm with you.
Following me?
I am following you because I think that leaky bucket analogy is super helpful. I can picture that, right? Like it's what's the point? You're pouring, everything's
Yeah,
pouring
it's
out.
all just leaking right out. You're not getting ahead, right?
Yep. And I know you have done a lot of work. You ran the whole clinical study, and we had amazing results from this study, from Vivix Plus specifically, not the ingredients, actual Vivix Plus. So, can you take us through the proof and what makes Vivix? Because I know you personally are so just, you were completely shocked at what we found.
I was. I do want to spend 2 seconds, if you'll let me, talk about some of the original work that we did on this in cells. Because, as a scientist, I love the mechanistic data, and we wanted to prove out that we were targeting those two sides, that the damage, the depletion, and we saw that. In these beautiful experiments that we did, we saw less damage, we saw increases in NAD, we saw 35 fold better increases in NAD than IV infusion. We saw healthier mitochondria. So
Wow.
everything was telling us that yes, we are reducing the damage, and yes, we are helping to fuel that energy. And then, as you mentioned, we did this beautiful clinical study. We enrolled healthy people right in that range where you start to feel the effects of aging creeping in. And we thought, okay, if we are helping to protect against the damage and helping to really protect against that depletion by fueling that energy, where would we see it first? And Kim mentioned this, and where we would see that is in VO2 max. And VO2 max is just that. That's really helping us to measure how efficiently our body is making and using energy. But it also is the single best predictor of longevity, period. Okay, so not cholesterol, not blood pressure, not blood sugar. VO2 max is the single strongest predictor of longevity, period. And it's really, really hard to move. So the fact that we saw in this study an increase, and not just any increase, a 3.2 unit increase in just 60 days when we gave people Vivix Plus is absolutely incredible. So I want to put that into perspective for you all. And this is where that reversing 8 years of cellular aging in 2 months comes in. So VO2 max, just like a lot of things that decline as we get older, VO2 max declines as we get older. And it declines by about a half a unit every year. So the 3.2 unit increase that we saw in 2 months is what you typically see in declines over 8 years. Okay, did you get that?
That's
The
crazy,
the
actually.
3.2 unit increase we saw in just 2 months is the declines you would typically experience over 8 years. So again, we're reversing 8 years of cellular aging in just 2 months. And remember, this is the single strongest predictor of longevity, one that is very, very difficult to move, one that typically only intense exercise can move. And we moved it very significantly in just 2 months.
And it's crazy. Most people probably haven't even heard of VO2 max. I mean, I think some people have, and some people definitely have. I never had heard of it. So this
Now
is
you're
really
going to
good
hear
to
it
know.
everywhere, right? If you
I
can track
have
one
been.
thing, track your VO2 max.
Apple Watch, it's all over social. You're right. You're right. So talk to us about the other proof that I'm seeing here on the screen.
Yeah. And I mentioned this just briefly in proving out the damage and the depletion side of this. We saw a 70% increase in NAD levels in just 24 hours. So that's telling you that we're with Vivix Plus, I should have mentioned this, we're giving you those patented polyphenols. We're also giving you NMN, which is a source of NAD. And then we're also protecting that NAD with apigenin. So by giving you that NMN, we're seeing these rapid increases, 70% increases and NAD levels in just 24 hours. And y'all, that's 35 times more NAD, 35 times more NAD than what you would get with an NAD IV infusion. So we are giving you that NAD to really help power and fuel that cellular energy. And then it's not needing to be used to repair damage, right? Because we're protecting those cells. So that energy, that NAD can be used to really help your cells function at their best, to really function optimally.
Amazing. Now, because Mashan in the chat is asking a really great question, and I kind of want to. So the clinical proof is clearly like, wow, like emoji of like, wow. But what does this mean? Like, what are people actually feeling? Because I think
Yeah.
double digit in inflammation, like all of that, like that's wow. But what do you feel?
Yeah, good question. Um, One thing that we did, I'll speak to the clinical first. One thing we did in the clinical was ask just that. Okay, VO2 max, but what does that feel like? So what we did is we just had people go out and walk. Just go walk 6 minutes. We all walk, right? We all want to move our bodies. They just went out and walked for 6 minutes. After 2 months, they walked almost an entire football field longer than they did before starting Vivix Plus. So that is one way you're going to feel this. The
Yeah.
other thing I mentioned is remember, oftentimes that energy that you are generating is having to be used to repair damage. But when we're protecting cells from that damage, that energy can be used by all of your cells to help them fuel optimally. So think brain cells. You could very well see some, and I know that in the pilot study, people said their focus, their attention
Yeah.
was improved. That energy is fueling every single cell in our body, from our brain to our heart to our muscles. So that extra energy is going to be reflected in all of those different body systems, from just feeling more energized to sleeping better to having better attention and focus. So I've been using it, and y'all, the benefits are across every body system. I can feel that.
I feel the same. I feel like that I was kind of like, you kind of feel you struggle to keep going, like, you're tired. And one of the things that I want you to speak to is that what did people, because I'm hearing about this more and more, what did people see in terms of connection, social
Oh,
connection?
yes,
That's cool.
I love this. Yeah, again, it wasn't just physical abilities that improved, but we measured quality of life, and we saw an improvement in social connection. So not like they were going out and meeting new friends, but the connections with their friends, their family, the people they love was stronger.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, and we're still, really trying to dive into what all of this means, but I really think it's because they just had more energy to give. You
Yeah.
say yes to the things you may have previously said no to when you just didn't have the energy. So you're saying yes to the walk, you're saying yes to dinner with friends, you're saying yes,
Yes.
and that helps really to improve that those connections.
Yeah. You feel better, you feel more, so yeah, I love that. You are more likely to say yes in life. I love that. I love that. One key thing for everyone, because I want to switch over while we have you, Erin, to BioAge and the stack. But one key thing, everyone here on the call, those clinical studies, that clinical proof, those claims was based on 2 months. So when you think about how you are selling this product, I don't want you to sell this as a one bottle situation. This is a product that people need to consistently be on and to see those kinds of results. Yes, we have 24-hour claims, but to see those true results, all of this stuff that Erin is talking about, that people need to you need to put this on loyalty. You need to put this on auto ship. I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. So, shifting gears. Yes, conference was such an amazing moment, but I want to set the